Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Dorothy O'Byrne, Managing Director of CCMA, joining you this lovely Friday morning. Delighted to see you all. Our discussion this morning is yet another interesting one in terms of the challenges of the new ways of working and the new hybrid models of working, which a lot of companies are still looking at. And we know from our recent survey that hopefully some of you got to access that we have, nearly half of the companies who took part, 100% of their workforce are working from home, and it looks like that'll continue. So when we were looking at topics for today's webinar, we were delighted that Cormac was available to discuss this topic of enhancing working from home coaching practices, because we certainly know from the member companies we've spoken to that it is a challenge to, the biggest challenge is employee engagement, but it is a challenge to keep people motivated, but also to encourage and continue normal sort of in-house activities in terms of coaching and personal development and management development and monitoring performance. So Cormac is the expert in this area, and once again we're delighted that he's joining us this morning to share his views and expertise and some useful hints and tips on this. Before I hand over to Cormac, just as always to say, please send through any questions you have as we go along. I'll be keeping an eye out on them and putting them forward to Cormac, and he likes to get as many questions as possible. So please, the tougher the question, the better. I'll hand over now to Cormac and let Cormac go through his presentation. Thanks, Cormac. Yeah. Take care.
And what I'd like to say just about the questions there, Dorothy, if you ping in the question, rather than wait till the end, I'll try and answer it in the minute, because it's probably something that's been suggested to you by something that I've been talking about. These things work much better whenever I get a question in the middle of the slide that's related to the slide. So don't be shy. If something occurs to you, type it into the type box, and Dorothy can ask it right away, and it really helps everyone. So first off, everyone, thanks for coming along. I appreciate everyone's busy. I'm talking today about something that's kind of closer to what Innovate do. It's closer to our core practice. So I hope it doesn't come across as a sales pitch, and it's not as prepared as some of my other slides. So this is really some tips and tricks of the things that we've discovered as we've been helping companies coach since we've been doing it for about 10 years, but since the beginning of the COVID crisis, what we've seen that's different, and things that we think that are important as you move to this new way of working. But what I'd like to do first is I'd like to find out a little bit about what you guys are doing right now with regard to coaching. So we've got a poll. So Niamh, I wonder, could you open the poll?
That poll is live there now, so I don't know if you want to read through it or if you want me to.
Yeah, do you want to read through it, Niamh, just as...
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, so the question, guys, if you can see it up there and you can see some of the answers are coming in, it's what coaching are you currently doing with your staff today? So are you coaching staff at home and in the office regularly and documenting those coaching? Are you coaching work from home and office staff, but some conversations and documents are informal? And coaching staff in the office, but no formal coaching for work from home staff, not regularly coaching your staff, or no coaching at all. So yeah, I see some answers are coming in, so give that a little bit of time for you guys to answer. Just gonna give about 15 more seconds.
Yeah. Niamh, can I actually see the poll, or can we see the results? Is that possible?
Yeah, it should be over in your side panel, Cormac, but if not, okay. I'll do it for you. I'm just gonna close the poll now. We've got pretty much all our answers in.
All right.
Great. So that's 40% coach their staff at home and office, so that they regularly coach and document that coaching. Cormac, that's 40%.
Great. Yeah, that's fantastic.
50% coach, but it's a little bit more informal. So some are informal. That's 50% for that.
Okay.
10% are coaching staff in the office, but they have no coaching at the moment for work from home staff. And
okay.
0% on the other two, which I suppose is good to see.
Okay, so everybody's coaching, which is great. And it's interesting what people are saying. I think we 40% that are documenting it all.
Yes.
And what did you say? 50% have
coaching, but they're not documenting everything.
Great. Okay. Now let me see how I get the How do I get my slides back? There we go. Can you see the slides?
Yeah, we can indeed, Cormac.
Yeah.
All right. So why continuing to coach staff at home is important. As human beings, we really want to be with others. We're social creatures. There's a lot of research on this. There's a particularly interesting piece from a guy called Robin Dunbar. And what he says is that we tend to have close connections with about 150 people. So, and what he defines a close connection as is if you bump into someone that you'd be happy to stop and have a chat with them and a wider ranging conversation with them about how they're doing, what's going on, what their life's like, go for a drink in a bar with them. And what he says is that's about 150 people. And most mammals are like that, and especially apes, but especially human beings, we can handle a lot of social relationships. And when those are taken away, it tends to detract from us. So we really like it and we really need it. So I think it's really important to have that in the background, that when people are at home, even though they've got some social relationships still, they probably don't have as many as they need. And whenever you're talking to them as a manager, that's something that it's important for you to give them a sense of what else is going on in the world, in the corporate world, that maybe they don't see. The second thing is, and this is particularly with regard to coaching during COVID, staff want interaction first and coaching second. So one of the things there is that your team leaders need to really develop these social skills for those that haven't got them. So it's about really showing interest in the staff member at the beginning before you get into any structural or formal coaching. Now that might seem obvious, and you think, well, of course you're going to do that. But you know, if as a senior manager or as someone running training, it's important for you to have a quick assessment of whether team leaders are doing that and try and find out if there's a way that you can assess whether team leaders are doing that and help them to develop those introductory social skills. Some people don't like working from home, others do. It tends to run down the introvert-extrovert line. Introverts tend to like working from home. They have a better inner life, or well, not a better inner, they have more of an inner life. They like space in their own. Extroverts, and some of them really dislike it. We're working with a utility at the moment, and there are a number of people that are just clamoring to get back into the office again. And you know, so it's to be aware of that. However, what we've seen over the period of COVID is that preference for home working can change over time. And you can't just categorize people at the beginning and say, oh, these ones like working from home, these ones don't. I think, you know, what we saw is people went through kind of a set of phases. So at the beginning, there was kind of surprise. I'm at home. Goodness, how is this going to work? What's going to happen? Then there was a period of novelty, which I think was quite positive, where people quite liked it. It was quite summery at that stage, and people thought this is actually a little bit better than I thought it was going to be. And then now we're getting to a stage where people are starting to go, oh, I'm missing things that I didn't think I would miss. You know, I'm missing some of these maybe meetings that I thought were boring during the week, but I got to see everybody and I got to hear what was going on, and the chat before the meeting and the chat after the meeting, that was quite useful. So there's the risk now as people move to that third phase that they're starting to detach a little bit more, and that you need to just be careful about that. I think one of the other things that we've seen is that even the same conversation with customers, when that conversation is made from home, is different. So because your employee or your agent is in a different context, the customer knows that and they know that, and that will change the conversation. You know, we're working with a banking customer at the moment, and one of the things that they do is they handle complaints. So whenever the employee is calling up the customer, what they're doing is they're saying, oh, well, we're working from home. And, you know, what they're getting is they're getting a couple of things. So the first one is, oh, that's great. This isn't a core function. It's handling a complaint. I really respect the fact that you're keeping going during this period. And you're working at home. Well, what's that like? Or what's it like over there? it changes the context of the conversation such that it opens new opportunities, but creates new questions. So there's new opportunities with regard to creating a close relationship more quickly. But it creates new questions such as, oh, do you have access to all the same support that you might have in the office to help me do what I need to do or handle my complaint? So one of the things that's really important when you're coaching people at home is to recognize that even though maybe some of the conversations haven't changed, the way that they will be delivered will be different, right? But the other thing to recognize is that the conversations have changed too. So different topics come up. So another customer that we're working with at the moment is a utility, and they're handling small business customers. And of course, COVID has changed things radically for small business. And for example, one came up the other day, which was just talking to dentists. Now, you wouldn't think dentists would ever be in trouble, but particularly because it's a medical environment, they're impacted more severely than lots of other businesses, and they're going, well, we're not sure what to do, we're not sure how we're going to open. But one of the things that we found that was really different is the people working in the contact center always thought of dentists as being professionals, quite senior, and COVID has changed the nature of the relationship. It's equalized it quite a lot. And to help your staff maybe to step up and say, hold on, you need to look at the impressions that you have of your customer's context. And maybe you need to question that again. Maybe you need to put some things on the table, hey, how's COVID affecting you? And step toward those problems rather than skirt away from them, right? And it might seem obvious again to do that, but actually making that explicit and bringing that in as part of your coaching conversation can be really valuable. I think number 7 that we've got is without the office around us, people tend to crave more structure and peer comparison. So what we would always say is, compare yourself to your past and set your own standards and don't worry about what other people are doing. But as human beings, we always like to look around and see how the others are doing. And if people can't do that at the moment, they can feel a little bit lost. So, what you've got to do is you've got to find ways that they can see that and give them some sense of what their peers are doing. We're going to talk a little bit later about group coaching. That's one way of doing it. But even if you're not going to do group coaching, think about ways, especially at the introduction of the coaching context, where you can say a little bit about what other people are doing, as long as you're not, revealing confidences, right? And the thing is that even if many of us say that we don't like the office and we don't like the structure, and often I found that those that complain of it most, whenever it's taken away, they're the ones that want it most, right? So you need to keep your ear open for people that you went, well, you always want it. If your impression as a coach is, well, you always wanted to be at home, you're at home now, so stop complaining. That may not be right. It may be that people have moved, they find themselves at home, and they've actually made discoveries about themselves. They've made discoveries, actually, I thought I didn't like the office, but I really do, right? And then the last one that you've got is, without people to baseline themselves, without others to baseline themselves against, people always don't know when they're drifting, right? So the quality may be slipping. The way that they're handling particular conversations may not be as of the same quality as they did before. In the office, there's a natural reset that happens where people can see others around them, and even without knowing themselves that they're benchmarking, they're always doing that. So the important thing there, at least the beginning of that, is for you to notice when people are drifting and bring that into the coaching conversation where you're going, hey, I see maybe in the opening part of the conversation, you're not doing the same things that you were doing maybe a month ago. Have you noticed that you're doing that? So it's important, for the coach or the team manager to look critically, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but to look at how people are handling their conversations and thinking, is that really what they were doing before? And maybe even go back a couple of months and listen to a conversation that someone had a couple of months ago and see, well, where have they changed, right? So, that's that one. Any questions on that, please ping them in, and I'm going to flick on to the next slide. Oh, actually, we've got another poll. So Niamh, if you want to run the other poll, just any questions that you have on the previous slide, if you want to just ping those in, that would be great.
Yeah, so second poll here. So it's questioning, what are your plans for reintroducing staff to the office? So you plan to get back to normal, and that's the old normal, as soon as possible. You will have some staff fully at home and others fully in the office. You aim to get about 80% of your staff into the office at some stage during the next month. You aim to get 50% of your staff into the office at some stage during the next month, or home working will become the dominant way of working. So everyone working from home will be the new way of working. There will be no staff in the office. Most staff will not be in the office. So if you want to kind of have a look at those answers and get your answers in there now. So you've got some coming in.
And Cormac, just to say while we're waiting for that, I mean, I think that this is changing all the time for people, because obviously we did our survey, and the survey was taken in June, and the figures I think will have changed slightly if we were to do that survey today, because with spikes happening in other countries, with a couple of workplace like the building sites this week, a couple of obviously fast food outlets, I think companies and organizations are much more conscious of the risk of reopening and there being some sort of a breakout, So I think this is a real moving target.
It's a moving feast, yeah. But I think it's really interesting for people to see, as this shift happens. So, I'm sure you'll have another presenter in a month's time with a similar question, and you may get quite different answers then as well, Dorothy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, so we've got the answers up there now. 25% say they plan to get back to normal as soon as possible.
Right. Oh, that's quite high. Yeah, okay, yeah.
We've got 33% saying some staff at home and other in the office is the plan.
It's a split, yeah.
Yeah, nice split there. We've got 0% saying 80% of staff back in the office, and 33% saying getting 50% of the staff back in the office.
Yeah.
33%.
I think that's interesting. What we found when we're doing the coaching is having a split where you've got people always at home, and then you've got people in the office, and you're trying to do a group coaching session. It's quite difficult, just practically. You've got some people on the Zoom screen, and then you've got one part of the screen with people social distancing in an office, and it's quite difficult to get the dialogue going. And one of the things, and it's early days to say it, but trying to get people into the office maybe a day a month, even if they're predominantly home workers, can be something that's really valuable to keep people connected. But you need to make sure you get the most out of that visit that's there. But those are really, really interesting figures. I mean, how do I get my slides back?
Yeah, you're back there now. It's back on yourself.
Where is it? Oop. All right. So I think the next one is that I can't see the slides, Niamh, so I'm just going to read them off my paper, if that's okay.
Yeah, it's not showing up for some reason, Cormac.
Okay. What have I done? Sharing, share screen.
Do you want to escape out of it and just put it down and then put it back up to full screen? Just if that's a PowerPoint. We don't have a that, Niamh, do we?
I do. I can just share it here if you'd like, Cormac, and I can just run it for you.
Yeah, you just maybe just pop it up. Yeah.
And Cormac, while you're doing that, so are you saying if companies come up with a hybrid model of certain percentage working from home and a certain percentage working in the office, are they better to coach those two groups differently?
There's challenges both ways. If you coach them both differently, then you've got a problem of divergence in what people are doing, and you don't want that. You end up with an us and them situation. So you don't want to coach them differently. You want to keep them together. But whenever you start to coach them, with some at home and some in the office, you get into practical difficulties about putting them into a group. Now, technology might catch up with that as we move forward, you know, that you've got maybe screens around the table so that people are Zooming even though they're in the same room. But for now, what we're recommending is if you can get the people working from home into the office, and I know it's difficult, but, you know, I think what did we have? We'd 33% have 50%. What was the stat that we had there, Neve?
Yeah, 33% wanting 50% of their staff in the office. So yeah, 33%.
Yeah, so I think that's probably the direction to try and go, is if you can get some people coming into the office. I know some will never be able to come in, you know, until we've got a vaccine.
Yeah.
But if you can bring in people, you know, for 1 or 2 days a week, a month, I think that really helps. And then if you do that, and then you do the mixed coaching, you have some in the office and some at home, it tends to go better, right?
And a question from Susan. So do you think coaching conversations are best done via screen, i.e. face-to-face, or is phone an equally good option in your experience?
I think screen's better. Seeing people's faces really helps. But if you can't do it, don't not do anything. So phone is better than nothing, but screen is better.
Okay.
What we found is that some companies have restrictions on using Zoom and various technologies other than phone because of GDPR and customer data. So if you can get past that and have a secure sharing environment, it's worth it. But if you can't, use the phone and use conference calls. It works. It gives you something, right?
Okay, perfect. Your presentation is up there now, Cormac.
Yeah, so just a few things here. Realize you'll need to carry out more psychological care than you would in the office. So 3 things that we'd say about that. Check the current context that people are in. If there's kids running around, remark on it, give permission, say it's okay. People will feel conscious about that. And don't just do it the first time you coach, continue to do it, right? So make people comfortable. The second one is ask, don't tell. So rather than go in as a coach and say, we're going to talk about this today, give maybe more space than you would normally about, well, what would you like to talk about today, right? And then the third thing is, and maybe do this at the end of the session, is use it as an opportunity to say what other people are doing, right? Because they're not going to have the same chance to have spoken to others that they would do in the office. So say, oh, such and such is thinking about this kind of an area, that you don't need to give away confidences, but even hearing other people's names and the fact that other people are going through the coaching process is useful for people to hear, right? So I'm just aware of time here, Dorothy. So
yeah, I have a question from Patrick. What about people who really do not want face-to-face, for example, via webcams? I found a few people being really unwilling to use the webcam for face-to-face since working from home.
That's interesting. I suppose if they really don't want to, then switch it off. What you might do is allow them to switch off their video, but continue to present your video. They will get value from seeing you, even if you can't see them. And the fact that you're doing that may mean in the second, third coaching session, they may be happier at that stage to turn the video on, right? So it's about creating that sense of presence. And so I hope that answers your question, Patrick. If you have any comeback, please come back and say more, but that's what I would think. So just point 2 that we've had is don't just call for a chat, and 3 things that we'd say about structure. So the first one is try and do it in blocks. So rather than say, when's the next coaching session, what we would suggest is do it in blocks of 4. So get 4 in the diary. You don't necessarily have to have all the topics for all the 4 initially, but having a big topic for that period is quite useful. So, you know, we're going to focus on openings for the next 4 sessions. Let's get them in the diary, right? The second one then is have a structure about how you're going to run the session. Now in Innovate, we're strong proponents of the GROW method. And what that does is it gives a really structured way to go through the session. But use whatever you like, but try and get a structure which gives you a similar way to go through the session. And then the last one is it's really important to let the staff member record their new actions. So what are you going to do differently, and where are you going to put that in front of you during the day especially if you're working from home, so that it'll prompt you, oh yeah, I'm going to try something different. And then how are you as the coach or the team leader going to see that they did that? And there's a certain amount of trust required there, but think about what that structure is going to be like. I think the third thing is, and this is true generally anyway, is positive reinforcement works better, especially when people are at home, because the two options you've got are positive reinforcement, which is, goodness, you did that really well, you should do more of that, versus correction, which is, that wasn't right, can you correct that, please, right? The first thing to recognize as coaches is positive reinforcement actually goes against our instinct as coaches. So we're inclined to correct. And the reason is, whenever you correct something and you go back and look again, they tend, because you picked out something negative, which is on average worse than what they would normally do, typically they don't do it in the next call. So you feel better. Your coaching may not have made any difference, but you feel better because it looks like they've improved. But what the research actually says is that positive reinforcement is the one that really improves skills over time. And so you may get polite acceptance, especially with people at home, that, oh yeah, thank you for that feedback, but it's less likely to actually help them change their behavior. And what I would suggest is that take a little bit more time than you might do normally to look for those occasional flashes of good work that people are doing that you can bring back to them, so that you can bring that, that fleck of gold back to them and say, I noticed that you did that the other day. Can you do more of that? That's great. And then the last thing I'd bring up is that the wider company communications can take on more significance when people are working at home. So these kind of emails that can land in people's desks from finance or marketing or various areas that define new rules without someone having really thought through what are the implications for my job and how I'm going to talk to customers. In the office, people will have a quick chat and go, oh yeah, I get that from marketing. What does that mean? I don't know, forget about it. It doesn't matter. At home, people can brood on it. So one of the things that can be useful for you to do is just do an audit of the communications that are going out, and stay in touch with the communications people are getting and how people are reacting to it. So if there's one or two people that you can take the temperature with regard to some of these communications, that's worth doing. Find a way to listen to the water cooler conversations if you like. All right. Next slide, please, Niamh. So group coaching, what we would suggest is I'm aware of time, so I'm going to go through this one quite quickly. Group coaching is important when people are working from home. The way that we would suggest is pick a piece of work. A call is a great example. Play it, discuss it, and as we said earlier, there'll be different types of calls since people are working from home. Not all organizations are set up to record calls from home workers yet, but even if you're recording a call from one of your workers who's in the office, it connects people together. Group coaching and Zoom, it really does work, but be careful. Safety is really important. Be really clear that you're not recording the session, right? So people have to be open to discuss it. If you're using Zoom, sometimes it can go to default record. Be explicit with people that you're not recording it. If you're doing it in another channel, be explicit you're not recording on it. It takes more structure to have conversations. So if you've got all the screens up, get a little convention going about people raising their hand or giving some indication when they want to speak. And as the coach, actively think about pulling people more in and polling them for their responses on what you're talking about, right? Be more willing to widen the conversation to people at home and their working context. So you'll have some people coming in that will be going on mute, right? Because of things going on in the background, that's okay. But, saying things like, John, I'm going to come to you in a couple of minutes, to give them time if they need to clear it up so that they can speak, that can be quite useful as well. And then the last thing I'd say is take more time over the checkout about what people will do differently, because people are going to listen more intently to each other because they've less exposure to each other about what other people are going to try. So there's a real opportunity for value there in the checkout phase, right? Do you want to just skip to the last slide there, Niamh? So coaching in the wider organizational, the one above that. So it's important that you get your reporting. I don't think I have time to go through all of this. Dorothy, are we out of time already?
We're at 31, but we'll just take a couple of more minutes, Cormac, just if you want to just this one.
All right, so the first one is you've got to get a bird's eye view of the coaching that's going on. So however you do it, you've got to find a way to record each of those coaching sessions that has happened. And if you can, to some degree, what the topic of conversation was. Do it for both your group and your one-to-one coaching. Ideally, you'd like to see, is coaching going across all of the competencies that you need for your role profiles? And what you'd love to see is, what's the competence of the people delivering your coaching? How are your team leaders doing? Are your staff developing? So, this is to the core of what Innovate do, is helping you connect the coaching to the reporting. But if you're doing it yourselves, these are the kinds of things that we would suggest that you think about. The second one then is stepping up a level. So how are you coaching your team leaders to coach? Are you getting them together in groups to have conversations about how their coaching's going, what works and what doesn't work in a coaching conversation? And the other one is, are they truly coaching to skills rather than metrics or KPIs? So one of the things that can happen if you don't have this level up is the team leaders are simply taking the KPIs that they are trying to deliver to, and they're going into the coaching conversation and they're just imposing that KPI on the staff and say, well, I just want you to reduce your call time, or your wrap time is a bit long. What are you going to do about making it better? Rather than getting into an actual coaching conversation. And we all know that that's kind of not what we want to do. And I'm sure that you have a management directive not to do that. But actually, if you're not giving the team leaders the support in developing their coaching skills, that's the default that they'll go to. And then the final one is, think about actual coaching plans that you can give to your team leaders. So maybe you can build like a 10 plan program where you're saying, well, here are the things that I would like coaching on, and you give that to the team leaders so that they can prep that type of a coaching session in order to run through it. So lots of thoughts there. I think let's just do a final poll, Niamh, and then I think we can wrap it up.
Great, that's live there. So if people want to start filling in the answers, the question is, what are your plans for coaching going forward? It's not a top priority through the current situation. You'll continue to coach as before with little or no change. You may change your coaching to meet current needs, but no additional investment, or you will increase investment in coaching over the next 6 to 12 months.
And just while we're waiting for that, and conscious of time, Cormac, if anybody's any further questions or wants to talk to you, obviously your contact details will come up, or they can drop me an email. But the other thing I'm conscious of, and we might come back to this topic, is an actual, maybe a role play of showing a good coaching session, and maybe that's something we could do to, a group of team leaders, because certainly from our research, the biggest challenge is engagement from an organization perspective, and then from a staff perspective, the biggest challenge was the lack of sort of camaraderie and the issues of not, as you said, the water cooler type moments or having a coffee with someone, that people are really missing that. So we might look at ways of bringing that back through the virtual working from home environment.
Yeah, I think that's great. And actually, if we look at what we've got there, I mean, it looks like people are really looking at coaching at the moment, and half of the attendees are looking to increase investment. So it looks like a hot topic for people. The only thing I'd say, Dorothy, is doing that probably take more than half an hour. It'll probably take us an hour.
I was going to say, we might look to do a more detailed workshop. So anybody that's on today's call that's interested in participating in that, just drop me an email afterwards, and myself and Cormac can look at putting something together in the next couple of weeks that maybe is a 90-minute or at most an hour, but a much more intensive one where you can actually give examples and go through the practical elements of it. Because I definitely think, and I know we talked about this before we came on the call, Cormac, is some team leaders are really struggling with this because it's a different environment actually being there amongst people and coaching in the normal way that they would have done it. And some people aren't set up for coaching, so they don't necessarily have the skills for coaching. So I think we need to be conscious of that too.
Yeah, and I think that the forum of the CCMA, providing an environment for team leaders to actually talk to each other about coaching, is really, really useful. And I think we can do a lot more to develop that. So just finally to say, anyone that wants to contact me, please do. we have got some structural supports, and I can let people play with that under the auspices of the CCMA if they want to have a look at it. There's no obligation. But that's it. And thank you for coming on today. There's not any more questions, Dorothy.
No, I think we're done on questions, and I'm conscious of time, so I know we committed to people.
Yeah.
It'll be just gone over the half hour. So Niamh, as always, thanks. Cormac, thanks so much. I know we're going to share slides up on the members area and a recording of the webinar, but we will come back to it. I'm conscious we're getting into the holiday season, so in terms of doing a workshop, it might be a couple of weeks away. Sorry, one quick question from Susan, and Patrick said thanks for the idea. Any view on recording sessions, Cormac? So I think you were of the view that in a group one not to record it. Was that what you were saying?
Be really careful about recording sessions.
Okay.
For coaching to work, you really need people to be open. And if they have any sense that they can get caught out by maybe misspeaking or saying something wrong, they're going to hold back. And that can be incredibly damaging to the coaching session. Safety is so important. We haven't gone into it. If we do go through the workshop, I'll go through some of the safety rules that we use.
Yeah.
But particularly for remote working, I would recommend you don't record the session.
Okay, great. Okay, we'll finish on that note. Sorry, we've gone a little bit over on time, but great to see everybody still logged in. And thanks as always. And just a gentle reminder for those on the call, it's awards season, so we're hoping you're all entering. And any questions or any queries about that, feel free to contact me directly. Thanks a lot. Take care. See you, Cormac. See you, Niamh. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.